Most people think ADHD is just about dopamine or medication, but if you don't have the raw materials to make dopamine in the first place, none of that works the way it's supposed to. And one of the most overlooked raw materials for the ADHD brain is protein. Today, I want to walk you through the 3 reasons protein is incredibly important for ADHD from a brain chemistry, blood sugar, and impulse regulation perspective. This is foundational, and it's something I look at very early when I work with both adults and children with ADHD. ADHD brains tend to have lower baseline dopamine signaling, particularly in the areas of the brain responsible for focus, for motivation, and executive function. This also means the system is more sensitive to stress, nutrient deficiencies, and blood sugar instability. Medication can help with dopamine signaling, but medication does not magically create dopamine. Your brain still has to manufacture it, regulate it, and recycle it. And that process depends heavily on nutrition. One of the most common patterns I see clinically is this: skipped meals, very low protein intake, heavy reliance on caffeine, or long gaps between eating. And then people wonder why focus crashes, irritability increases, or meds don't seem to work consistently. So let's break this down. Reason 1 is that protein provides the building blocks for dopamine. Protein contains amino acids, and one of the most important for ADHD is L-tyrosine. Tyrosine is the starting point for dopamine production. Here's the simplified pathway your brain uses. Tyrosine converts to L-dopa, which converts to dopamine. That's not optional. That's the only way dopamine gets made. But here's the part most people don't realize. That pathway requires multiple steps, and each step requires specific nutrients as cofactors. For example, iron is needed for the enzyme that converts tyrosine to L-dopa. Vitamin B6 helps drive neurotransmitter conversion. Folate or vitamin B9 supports methylation and neurotransmitter balance. Copper plays a role in dopamine metabolism, and vitamin C supports overall neurotransmitter synthesis. So it's not just about tyrosine alone, it's about having enough protein and enough micronutrients for the pathway to actually work. This is why I always say you can't push a pathway that doesn't have the raw materials. Even stimulant medications rely on your brain's ability to produce and regulate dopamine. If protein intake is low, you're essentially asking medication to work on an underfueled system. This is also why I often test things like iron, B vitamins, and mineral balance when ADHD symptoms aren't responding the way we expect. Reason number 2 is that protein stabilizes blood sugar, and a stable blood sugar drives focus. Blood sugar regulation is huge in ADHD, and it's something that gets talked about far less than it should. When blood sugar drops or spikes too quickly, the brain experiences it as stress. And that stress shows up as difficulty concentrating, brain fog, irritability, emotional reactivity, or feeling wired but tired. For an ADHD brain that's already more reactive, those fluctuations can hit much harder. Protein helps in 2 major ways. First, protein slows digestion, which helps prevent rapid spikes and crashes in blood sugar when you eat carbohydrates. Second, protein provides a more steady energy signal to the brain, instead of the roller coaster effect you get from refined carbs or sugar alone. Another key point here is timing. Protein is typically digested within about 3 to 5 hours, which means the body needs a regular supply throughout the day. Many people with ADHD skip breakfast, eat very little protein early in the day, rely on caffeine to get going, then crash hard later. That caffeine-powered focus feels helpful short-term, but without protein underneath it, the crash is almost inevitable. Stable blood sugar supports stable focus, and protein is one of the most powerful tools we have to create that stability. And reason number 3 is that protein reduces cravings and impulsivity. Impulsivity is a core feature of ADHD, and that includes food-related impulsivity. ADHD brains are more likely to reach for quick dopamine hits, highly palatable foods, and fast digesting carbs and sugar. Those foods temporarily boost dopamine, but they also worsen blood sugar instability and increase cravings later. Protein can help interrupt that cycle. When you eat enough protein, it increases satiety hormones like GLP-1 and PYY, which signal fullness to the brain and reduce that constant drive to snack. This matters because cravings aren't just about willpower. They're often a signal that the brain is underfueled, understimulated, or trying to self-regulate dopamine. Adequate protein intake helps to reduce constant grazing, improve impulse control, decrease reliance on ultra processed foods, and support more consistent energy and mood. And clinically, when protein intake improves, I often see fewer afternoon crashes, fewer late night cravings, and better emotional regulation overall. So, to pull this all together, protein is not a minor detail in ADHD. It directly supports dopamine production, blood sugar stability, energy regulation, and craving and impulse control. This is why I consider protein foundational and not optional. It doesn't replace medication when medication is needed, it doesn't replace therapy or other strategies, but without it, everything else doesn't work nearly as well. If you want to go deeper into nutrition and ADHD, I cover this in much more detail inside my course, The Natural ADHD Solutions. There's an entire module dedicated to diet and how it impacts the ADHD brain. You can find that linked in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, consider subscribing for more evidence-based ADHD content.